Republicans are voting on a bill to restrict President Biden's control over the release and sale of our nation's emergency oil supply. Joining me right now is Texas Congressman and member of the House Energy Committee, Dan Crenshaw. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. Critics say Biden tapped that SBR as an election stunt to bring down gasoline prices right before the midterm elections, and now we're sitting at historic lows. You're trying to prevent that from happening again. Tell us about it.
Right. Well, the SBR Act that we passed, it does a very simple thing. This shouldn't really be controversial. It says if you're going to take out of the SBR, you've got to have a plan to replenish it. You've got to have a plan to actually lease federal land for drilling. You've got to have a plan for production so that we can refill it. This should not be controversial. The Democrats are acting like this is the craziest, most extreme thing ever. They're the extremists. They want to deplete the SPR, which is meant for emergencies, by the way. It's never been meant for price controls. And by the way, it had minimal effect on gas prices. So he was wrong about that. He's wrong about using it. He's wrong about selling it to China. And he's wrong about threatening to veto this bill, which is a good bill. It should be bipartisan. We're just trying to solve problems here to replenish the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is designated for emergencies when we're out of gas.
Well, I don't understand why we are selling this emergency oil to China, our number one adversary. Do you have any answers on that?
Well, it goes into an open market, and so they'll buy it up. But to your point, it's foolish to sell it in the first place. And what we see from the Chinese is that they've been piling up their stockpiles of oil and gas because they're not big producers of it. So I understand why they're doing that. But we shouldn't be giving it to them. We shouldn't be enabling that kind of behavior. We need to be producing more. And by the way, Republicans back in 2020 said that we should buy at the record low levels. If we had done that, if we had done the Republican plan back in the early 2020, if Democrats had been on board with that, the stuff that they'd be selling now would be at record profits for the taxpayers. They have screwed this up in so many ways. It's really hard to fathom.
Well, Congressman, meanwhile, you've got the president and Democrats using scare tactics in a new push to raise the debt ceiling. Watch this.
You got to cut your they want to cut your Social Security and Medicare. No, this is the God's truth. It's almost unbelievable. And beyond that, they're actually threatening to have us default on the American debt, a debt that's been accumulated over 230 years. What in God's name would the Americans give up the progress we've made for the chaos they're suggesting? Not on my watch. I will veto everything they send us.
Wow, we know for a fact that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said that there will be no cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Should Biden be taking this victory lap on his economic plans?
I mean, he's just lying. There's a couple lies to parse out here. First of all, we're not going to default on the debt. That's not the Republican plan. The Republican plan is to say, okay, let's raise the debt ceiling, but we have to have some spending measures in place that put us on a sustainable debt trajectory. That's just responsible spending, right? If you got a bunch of bills all of a sudden at the end of the month and you're like, whoa, I spent way too much on my credit card. Okay, so I'm going to pay off my credit card, but I've really got to rein in my spending. That's what a normal person, a normal household would do. That's the Republican plan. Now, Biden's bringing up Social Security and Medicare. No, that's not even on our agenda. Let's be clear. Who's going to cut Medicare and Social Security? It's Democrats. You know why? Because they're not going to try and solve this problem until they go insolvent. When those programs go insolvent, automatic benefit cuts occur. That's on Biden. That's on Democrats. Let's be clear. In the early 2000s, if we had taken up George Bush's Social Security plan, Social Security would be solvent right now. People wouldn't have to worry about it. But Democrats told us that we were going to throw Granny off of a cliff. They scared the American people. They used scare tactics. They're doing it now because they refuse to solve these problems. He's lying on multiple fronts, and it's only going to hurt American seniors and the American people.
Yeah. Congressman, I want to get your take on how you're going to figure this out and come up with solutions, because your colleagues have said that you want to go back to 2022 spending levels. If you go back to 2022 spending levels, that's a cut in defense spending. Do you really want to cut defense spending right now while China is rising and Russia is so aggressive on Ukraine? How do you square this circle in terms of raising the debt ceiling, yes, but also putting boundaries in place for the next fiscal year spending?
Well, you look at non-defense discretionary spending, and it's increased double-digit percentages over the last few years. It's increased massively. It's very easy to find cuts there. I personally do not want to cut defense spending. It doesn't need to increase in this exorbitant manner, but you don't need to cut it either. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this particular the budget plan means cutting defense spending. It just has to go through regular order, and it will go through regular order. It will go through the committees. It will go through each appropriations bill, and we'll fight it out as it goes. So I'm not as worried about it. These supposed rules that we've talked about they don't necessarily pertain to just defense spending. So I think we can get on the right track here.
Well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez yesterday or this week said that she wants a wide open border. She wants this administration to overtake and reverse Title 42. And she also is blaming the Trump tax cuts and Donald Trump on all of this debt. Watch this.
Congresswoman, quickly on the debt limit, Democrats have been in charge for the past 2 years. Do you think Democrats have spent too much money?
I think the largest contributor to the debt ceiling or to our deficit has been the Trump tax cuts. But I got to go.
The Trump tax cuts, Congressman, your thoughts?
She's very confused. We all know this. So right after the Trump tax cuts, the federal government received a record amount of revenue, year after year after year after year. So it's just wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, it's just not true. Look, the majority of our spending comes from mandatory spending. About 70% is from Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the debt. The rest of the 30% is the discretionary stuff that we argue about every year. About half of that is defense spending. So you do have very little to work with. If you don't get our major programs on a sustainable trajectory, well, then you're going to put our country on an unsustainable trajectory when it comes to debt. It really is that simple, and we do need to do a better job educating the American people on really what the problems are, and we have to have adult conversations on how to fix them.
All right, we will leave it there. We'll see if those adult conversations take place. Thank you so much, sir. Good to see you.